27th anniversary of my 27th birthday. It's not hard. Just do the math. Uh, the, the, the one challenge is every few years, if you're a pastor, it will fall on Sunday, and then there's nothing you can do about it. A few years ago, I started doing something just because I felt like if somebody could be my friend on Facebook, I should at least occasionally be friendly. So I just everybody, if you're my friend on Facebook on your birthday, I'm going to wish you happy birthday. I mean, it's going to say happy B-Day. It's not an essay, but I'm going to put it on there. I just seem like the least I should do. And what that means is that, well, I've got quite a few friends from all my different stops along my life. That means that on my birthday, my timeline just gets absolutely flooded with birthday wishes. Which is cool. I get to go back through them, like I said, all my life, and everybody from elementary school to everywhere I've been, and get to remember all that stuff. But there's a biblical principle there. It's the principle of sowing and reaping. Because I go to the very minor thing of wishing people happy birthday, people tend to wish me happy birthday, right? That's a basic law, not a law. It's a principle of sowing and reaping. Now, here's the thing. We wish it was a law. Because the principle means it's generally true that generally when you do good to people, generally people do good back to you. And generally if you're nice, people are generally nice back to you. And it applies a significant percentage of the time. But it doesn't always, right? Because there are frequent times when even if you're a really good person, really bad things happen. And sometimes, in my mind, almost as bad, maybe worse, sometimes if you're a really bad person, really good stuff happens, right? And we wish it was a law. Matter of fact, we try our best to make it a law. We try to make it so that we can pretend like bad things happen to bad people, good things happen to good people. But the reality is that's not how it works. Matter of fact, I saw an article this past week, and it was talking about the two biggest objections people have to Christianity, at least from an intellectual basis. And one of them was the resurrection, the fact that Jesus rose from the dead, which we'll talk about, I don't know, how about Easter? And the other is the idea that there is so much bad that happens to so many people who don't seem to deserve the bad. Well, Jesus jumps right into the middle of that argument about bad things happening to people. Does that mean they're bad people? If you want to, turn on your Bible to John 9. Matter of fact, if you don't normally get your Bible out and follow along, you need to today. I'm going to go backwards and forward in some scripture. We're going to look at a lot of stuff today. So if you use the bible.com/events thing, that'll work. If you have the Bible app and you say find an event near me, it will pull up the notes for today. So I'm giving you every option in the world, okay? So it's not my fault if you don't have it, but here we go. John 9, starting verse 1. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? Something bad happened, therefore he must have done something bad, or his parents did something bad. So it's right in the middle of that thing. Matter of fact, a real popular concept now, misapplied frankly, is karma. The idea that when you do something bad, bad stuff happens to you. Never mind that you're missing the whole Hindu point of it, which is something bad happens in your next life. Can I just explain it real fast? Okay, it annoys me, even though we're definitely way not Hindu. Don't misuse their words. In Hinduism, karma means if I do something bad in this life, I come back as a cockroach. Okay, it doesn't mean that a truck runs into me. So just verify that when you use the word karma, you're talking about reincarnation, which we don't believe happens, so don't use that word. Come up with something else. Law of sowing and reaping will work. It's longer, but it's accurate. Okay, sorry. That was free. It's my birthday. I can talk about what I want to. So they ask the question, Jesus, who sinned? Now Jesus replies, it is not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. Now it doesn't mean, Jesus isn't saying it happened, God did this bad thing to this person so that something. He's saying I was sent, the purpose of me was to come in and do good here. We must quickly carry out the task assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. Now, before I go any farther, I got to tell you, that's a big miracle. It's a bigger miracle than people understood up until a few years ago. Because what they found out now is that they've done some research where they had somebody who was indeed born blind, and they fixed their eyes. And you know what happens when you take somebody who was born blind and you fix the corneas and the retinas and all the stuff in their eyes? They're still blind. They just are blind with light. Because there's two organs involved in your body that are about seeing. One is the eye. The eye is the one that brings in all the light. But the thing is, you bring in a whole heck of a lot of light and visual information. And the first few years of your life, your brain is doing the process of learning how to interpret what the eyes bring in. And what they found is if somebody was born blind and has never ever seen, their brain has never been able to see, and you fix the eyes, all you did was make it where they can see light. Matter of fact, you'll see that once in the Bible. Jesus heals another person who was born blind, and he fixes the guy's corneas, he fixes the eye organ, and then Jesus says, okay, what do you see? He goes, he says trees. I just see shapes moving around. I see stuff. I see movement. I see color. I see light. But I don't see anything I can recognize. I can identify. And then Jesus goes back again and gives him a second dose. The first time he fixed the guy's eyes. The second time he rewired the guy's brain. And this guy, from the very first, when Jesus put the mud on there, he was at the same time fixing the corneas and the retinas and all that stuff. He was also rewiring the guy's brain. So this is one insane miracle. That's why, as we'll see in a little bit, everybody's freaked out about it, because nobody's ever fixed somebody who was born blind. Because fixing the eyes is relatively easy. Rewiring the brain, that's a challenge. Now, get back to our main point, though, for this concept. The disciples wanted life to be fair. That was the point behind the whole thing, wasn't it? That's why you say, who sinned? Because I want life to be fair. When somebody does something bad, I want something bad to happen to them. So if something bad's happening, I want to be able to trace it back to the person who's to blame. But here's the deal. Life's not fair. Okay? We live in a fallen, screwed up universe with tons of fallen, screwed up people, and life's not fair. Good things happen to bad people, and bad things happen to good people. By the way, if you're one of those people and you think you've been doing an okay job and life just keeps beating you upside of the head, that doesn't mean you're bad and God's mad at you. It means you live in this world. That'd be like me going to the beach with my red beard and lay it out in the sun all day and getting mad at God because he let me get sunburnt. That's the world we live in, okay? Now here's the thing. Life's not fair, but what we see here, it is purposeful. God has a purpose going on beyond fairness. Matter of fact, if you look in Matthew 5, verses 44 and 45, Jesus says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Now, I don't want that. I would like for him to only send the sun and the rain on us good people. Because when we say good people, is that who we're talking about? When I say the good people, that means us. And wouldn't it be better if, you could see who the good people were because they had sunshine? In my case, with one light cloud floating over so I don't get sunburnt, right? And the bad people are getting hailed on all the time. That'd be kind of cool if you could just spot them that way. Now, here's the thing. We have a tendency to act like that's true, though. That God sends his sunshine only on the good, and he sends the bad weather on the bad. We have this tendency to judge people that way. This is... have you ever done something you really don't want people to remember you ever did it? And this is one, I've done stuff that's embarrassing. This one's not embarrassing. It makes me feel bad about myself as a person. I'm serious. 30-some years ago, when the AIDS epidemic was just starting out, I taught I was in a room, very, very small room with very, very few people. I actually said, and I'm ashamed I ever said this, that AIDS sure looks like God's judgment. And I'm probably not the only person in the room who made that mistake, but I don't feel bad about you. I just feel bad about me. And then I moved to Virginia for seminary, and the pastor of the church I attended, his son was a hemophiliac. He had a blood clotting disorder, and he died from AIDS. So it's awfully hard to go around saying that was a judgment for God when somebody who was pretty much innocent got it. So I quit saying stuff like that. But we still have this tendency to want to say that bad things happen to bad people or their parents, like Jesus said, like the disciples asked Jesus, right? Didn't happen. It's, like, well, there's a reason our lives are pretty good because we're pretty good. And there's a reason those people over there have hard lives because, well, come on, they're the wrong religion. They're the wrong faith group. They believe really terrible things. They treat some of their people really badly. They treat their neighbors really badly. Therefore, God should do bad things to people in that part of the world because they're not good people like we are. Can you see how easily we could fall into that trap? If we start saying it's a law instead of a principle, and next thing you know, we're looking down at people that Jesus died for because bad things are happening to them. Do you see that? But God lets bad things happen, are you ready? To all of us. Anybody in this room, no bad things have ever happened to you. There's not been a life sucks phase of life for you. Yeah, no, there's not anybody here. Here's how I like to see it, though, from what Jesus said about, the power of God might be seen in him. He's not saying God made him blind. He's saying Jesus came to give God's glory in this situation. But I think God likes to make driftwood sculptures. You ever seen somebody takes a piece of driftwood and makes just these amazing pieces of art out of it? Some of you might even have some of the stuff in your house or hanging on your wall where somebody's going on the beach or going by a river and they found some driftwood. And then somebody who's really artistic, which means not me, comes along and they sand it and they polish it and they paint it and they do just all these wonderful things to it, and it comes out absolutely beautiful. And it's more beautiful than it would have been if you'd chopped down an oak tree. If you'd gone out on our property here somewhere in the church and chopped down a tree and taken a piece of wood the exact same size and you'd done the same sanding and the same polishing and the same painting, you wouldn't get something nearly as beautiful as you get from that driftwood. Now, here's the question. Did the artist abuse the driftwood? Did he throw it in the water? Did she throw it in the water? Did she beat on it with all the waves and the sand and all the storms? Did he or she cause all that damage and that grain messiness that is in driftwood? Did the artist cause any of that? No. But the artist found it, took it home, and took all the abuse and all the pain that wood has endured and made something incredibly beautiful. And that's what God does with our lives. We spend time getting beat up. We spend time being abused. All of you in this room have your stories about all the things that have happened to you, all the bad that you've been through. And God didn't do those to you, but he didn't stop them. But at the end, he had a purpose of bringing you out and polishing you up, and the pain doesn't go away and the scars don't go away. But he makes something beautiful out of something damaged. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's keep reading. This story is really good. Because God just kind of showed up in the middle of the situation. Got this guy born blind, and Jesus shows up. Let's keep reading, starting in verse 8. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, "Isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?" Because that's all a blind person could do. Some said he was, and others said, "Nah, he just looks like him." Because nobody can heal somebody born blind, so it can't be him, it's got to be somebody else. But the beggar kept saying, "Yes, I'm the same one." They asked him, "Who healed you? What happened?" He told them, "The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, 'Go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself.' So I went and washed, and now I can see." Cool, huh? Where's he now? I don't know. Now think about it for a second. He doesn't just not know where Jesus is. He doesn't know what Jesus looks like. He has no idea what Jesus looks like. Because what happened? Jesus, get my beat going. Because Jesus puts the mud on his eyes, sends him away. The first thing this guy sees is not Jesus. He's never seen Jesus. Pretty cool, huh? Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed him. Let me point something out here. How long has this guy been blind? Whole life. Was he blind the day before this on Friday? Was he blind on Thursday? Wednesday? Tuesday? Monday? Sunday? Years and years and years. He's been blind every day. Jesus has been in town in Jerusalem for a while. Is Jesus planning to be there the next day? Yeah. Jesus could have healed him on Monday. He could have healed him on Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Thursday, or Friday, or he could have waited a day and healed him on Sunday. And Jesus intentionally healed the guy on the Sabbath. Because the guy wasn't asking to be healed. The guy didn't approach Jesus. Jesus went, found the guy, and healed him on the Sabbath. Because Jesus knew it would tick him off. What verse was I on? 15, thank you. The Pharisees asked the man all about it, so he told them. He put the mud over my eyes, and when I washed it away, I could see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus is not from God, for he's working on the Sabbath. Others said, but how can an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? So there was deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion about this man who healed you? The man replied, I hadn't thought about it. I was too busy just being happy, having sight, I've just been partying all day, hadn't even thought about Jesus that much. Thank you for bringing him back up so I could think about him some more. Exact opposite of what they were trying to do. The man replied, I think you must be a prophet. The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see, so they called his parents. They asked them, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see? His parents replied, we know that this is our son, and he was born blind. But we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him, he's old enough to speak for himself. Now, his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, he's old enough, ask him. And now we see an undercurrent that's flowing through this whole part of the story, and that undercurrent is fear. Everybody in this story, except now the guy who's been healed, is scared. Okay, the Pharisees are scared because this Jesus, guys, he's threatening to upset their religion. He's come into their church world and he's messing things up, and they don't like the fact that he's messing things up. And they're afraid he's going to be popular and he's going to change things, and they don't like that. They're also afraid of the Romans because they're under Roman rule, and if he stirs up things too badly, the Jews are the one who kind of keep the peace. And if he stirs up things too badly, the Romans come in and they do bad things when Romans show up, when they're mad. So the Pharisees are scared to death, so they said anybody who says Jesus is Messiah, we're going to kick him out of the temple. Well, his parents are scared to death of getting kicked out of the temple. So they're going, oh no, you'll have to talk to him because we know nothing. Everybody's scared. Everybody's chaotic. Everybody's running back and forth. By the way, have you ever been told the lie that if Jesus comes into your life, if God comes into your life, everything gets calm? Go back through the entire Gospels. Go back into especially in the Gospel of John that we're reading right now, and look at it. When Jesus shows up, chaos breaks out. We'll talk about why in just a little bit. Okay, verse 24. For the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, God should get the glory for this because we know this man Jesus is a sinner. Guy says. Now, I don't know whether he's a sinner, but I know this. I was blind, now I can see. That's a cool verse right there. You can throw whatever you want at me, but I know one thing. I'm looking at you say it. And you can't get away from that fact that yesterday I couldn't see you say it. Now I'm looking at you say it, and there's nothing can change that piece of reality. Verse 26, but what did he do, they ask. How did he heal you? Look, the man exclaimed, I told you once. I sense a guy who's not scared much anymore. I told you once, didn't you listen? Why? Do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? I like this guy. Then they cursed him and said, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God speaks to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. Well, that's very strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, yet you don't know where he comes from. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one's been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. All their objections have just pushed him toward Jesus. Isn't that cool? You were born a total sinner, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue. All this fear, all this chaos, all this anger, why is it there? Because God showed up. Because we've got this nice, peaceful life, and everything is flowing through. And the problem is, when everything is flowing nice and easy, we forget about God, and God has to come in and remind us of his presence. And when he does, he upsets absolutely everything. And what happens is fear and chaos. Now, if I were to ask you, what's the enemy, the biggest enemy of faith? Some of you guys might say doubt. Oh, the opposite of faith is doubt. No. Matter of fact, without doubt, there can't be faith. The Bible teaches that if you can actually see it, you don't need faith in it. Faith means you can't see it. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. No, the opposite of faith is fear. It's when we see it and we know what it means and we're afraid to move toward it. Joshua 1:9, God's talking to Joshua. Haven't I commanded you be strong and courageous? Courageous, anti-fear. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I'm in a situation, I'm afraid. Only if you don't trust that God's in the situation with you. Matter of fact, 1 John 4:18, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. And if you're going to be a follower of Christ, by the way, fear is going to be part of your life. I mean, this is something I draw once in a while, and I haven't drawn it for a while, so I'm going to show you this. It's basically how you grow as a Christian. This is the basic nutshell of what it means to grow to become who God wants you to be. And it starts out, it's in John, later on in the same book. And it starts out with us obeying something God tells us to do. It could be very, very simple. When we obey it, God chooses, according to John and Jesus, to view it as love. It can be a very small obedience God chooses to say, that's love. When we choose to show God we love him by obeying, he then comes into our life and reveals something else to us about himself. Okay? In response to our expression of love through obedience, God reveals more of himself to us. Now here's the challenge. Whenever God reveals himself to us, what does it call us to do? Yeah, to obey what he just showed us. It's a cycle. As we obey, it proves to God that we love him. He gives us a greater revelation, so we obey a greater thing. And this cycle is the cycle that will follow you throughout your Christian life. If you just keep, as God teaches you something, as you keep acting on what he's shown you, he views it as love, and he gives you something else to do, something else to believe, another way to act, another thing to do, another thing not to do. Here's where the fear comes in. What happens when he reveals something to you? It scares you, right? I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I should do that. What will other people say if I do that? I don't know if I can carry that out. We just did a series on giving, and a lot of you went through a lot of what? Fear. Because God revealed something to you, and you had to decide whether or not to do it and overcome your fear. So throughout the Christian life, fear is a piece of the puzzle, and it always is. Okay? So, got the guy, you notice all the people were afraid, they're running in different directions. The guy overcomes his fear and speaks up for God. And so now God shows back up again in Jesus. John 9, verse 35. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man answered, "Who is he, sir? I want to believe in him." See, he doesn't know what Jesus looks like. Jesus shows up standing there, and he's like, "Hi, have we met? Have we met?" "Yeah, we did the whole healing of your thing." "You have seen him," Jesus said, "and he is speaking to you." "Yes, Lord, I believe," the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. Now, the rest of the chapter is talking about how the religious leaders, it contrasts. You've got the religious leaders who physically can see and are spiritually blind, and you've got the blind man who now physically can see and can spiritually see. But for my birthday, can I go Bible geek on you? That'd be okay. Just humor me with this, because there's a lot of cool Bible geek stuff happening in this chapter and in the Gospel of John as a whole. And I hope you don't mind if I just show you a couple things, because there's something really big going on. This is one story, but it's part of a really big story. And I want you to see the whole story, because through the whole thing, what we've had somebody who's blind physically who can now see spiritually, and we have people who can see spiritually who are blind spiritually. See physically, blind spiritually. Follow me, even if I'm get my tongue tangled up? Okay? So, the chapter before this, in John 8, is probably relatively about the same time. And in 8, verse 12, you can flip back a page to 8:12. It says, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, "I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life." Now, this is part of John. We should know how the Gospel of John's working. So if you're turn all the way back to John 1. The very beginning of the Gospel of John. And here it says this. You'll see this theme is just popping back up. In the beginning, the Word already existed. Now, who's the Word? Who's the Word? Jesus. Okay. You can always answer Jesus. It's almost always the safe answer. I mean, even if you're wrong, everybody says, "Oh, good answer. Good try, though." Nobody ever gets mad at you for giving the answer Jesus. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the Word is Jesus. In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. Here's that light again. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. Does that remind you of anywhere else in the Bible? Those of you who've been Christians for a while, does that remind you of anywhere? That whole in the beginning thing? And the light showing up. Yeah, that's Genesis 1. That's like the first few verses of the Bible. You don't have to hop there. I'll just read this to you. But if you want to look for it, it's not hard to find. It's the beginning. Okay? It's right after the table of contents. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. Now, let me see if we can get this. Because here's nothing. And God speaks and creates. And what does it say? It says that what he created was what? Formless and empty? It was just stuff, right? And what would be a word to describe that stuff? How about chaos is my word for the day? Chaos. And then into the chaos, God steps in and he brings order to the chaos. And it says the next thing God does as he starts bringing order is God shines light into the creation. Now that's not an eyelash, that's light. Okay, just in case you're curious. Now you can't see anything but that. Now, what does that light do? That light separates. And over on this one side, we've got dark, right? And the other side, we have light. See that in Genesis 1? What did Jesus just do? Jesus entered the situation, and what broke out? Chaos. And then Jesus speaks order into the situation. And then he shines a light, and suddenly the people are grouped in two groups, aren't they? You've got the Pharisees over here, and they're in the dark. And in the dark, we have what? We have fear. And honestly, we have death. But Jesus is over here speaking light to those on this side. And what does that light mean? First off, it means Jesus says, I am the life. Instead of death and fear, Jesus brings light and life. And one more thing, let's just keep reading, because if you just flip on over to John 10, if you left your finger there, Jesus starts talking about shepherds and stuff, but it's the same story. And then in verse 6 of chapter 10, he says this. Those who heard Jesus use this illustration didn't understand what he meant. See? So he explained it to them. I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who come before me were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep do not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. The thief's purpose is to kill, steal, and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. So, Jesus brings us life, and Jesus brings us, got room here, 2 L's, fullness. One side is fear and death. One side is light and fullness. Now, this whole darkness thing, can I read you a quote from that? This is Tom Wright. He says, the promise of full life, full to overflowing, is as relevant for us today as it was when the modern Western world, as it was then. The modern Western world has discovered how unsatisfying materialism really is and is looking for something more, something beyond. Many thieves have told lies and have deceived the sheep, stolen them, left them for dead. The call today is for Jesus' true sheep is to listen for his voice, to find in him and him alone the life which is overflowing life indeed. See, now can I start putting your story together with all that we've talked about? Because you, first off, have been the driftwood. You have been beaten, you've been abused, you've got the scars. Some of you currently are still riding in the depths of the ocean and are still getting beat up today. Right? And you have tried what the world tells you to try to get out of that. To get away from the fear, the death, to get away from the pain, all that stuff. You've tried the world's stuff to do it. You've tried material stuff. You've seen how much stuff you can collect. I know this because every day when I go to my gym, as I turn down the road, they just built a brand new storage center. You know the things that have garage doors on them, and you drive up, and all the stuff that won't fit in your closets, and won't fit in your attic, and won't fit in your garage, and won't fit in your outbuilding, you take to the storage building, and we build them constantly. Because we have been collecting stuff, thinking the stuff will bring us peace and joy and happiness and fullness. And it doesn't work. You've tried that one, you know. You may have, many of us have tried living life for pleasure. What can I do to make me happy? I will try anything. We've lived lives that if you want to use religious words like debauchery or just sinfulness or just lawlessness or just living however we want to live, we've tried that. We've done everything we can think to do that should bring us pleasure. And does that bring us fullness? Or does it bring us fear and shame? We've tried power. We've seen how much control we can gather over the world, our little piece of the world. Some of us, I'll use the word us instead of you, because I'm really good at this one too, have bought into lies so frequently that if I could just control everything around me, it would bring me peace, it would bring me joy, it would bring me fullness, and it just makes me feel worthless and empty and a failure, because when I try to control people, you guys won't cooperate. We've tried it. We've tried the darkness. We know what it has. Now, pretty much the next thing that happens in John 10, verse 19. When he said these things, the people were again divided in their opinions about him. Some said, he's demon-possessed and out of his mind. Why listen to a man like that? Others says, this doesn't sound like a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? God comes into our situation. We may have gotten it smoothed out. Instead of making it smoother, he brings chaos. Why? He wants us to recognize where we are. He wants us to recognize how empty our life is without him. So he comes in and he brings chaos. And out of that chaos, he starts to bring an order, and he shines a light on it. And that light brings life and fullness, and it shows the darkness for what it is, fear and death and pain. And then he says, just like we have the two groups of people, pick one. Choose. There is light and there is darkness. And I don't have to tell you what darkness is because you know. I don't have to tell you what happens when you choose the ways of materialism, when you choose the ways of power, when you choose the ways of everything else except God. You know exactly what it is because you have lived it. And God will come in and he will rock your boat and he will turn over your tables and he will say, choose. Choose today. Who are you going to serve? Light, which brings fullness, the light of Christ, the life of Christ, or the darkness with its fear and its guilt and its death. Now, in this room, there are some of you, and right now, your driftwood is out in the deep. You're getting beat up. You're going through some rough times. And you're asking, why? Now, I would never say that God caused you to be in this situation, but I will say God allowed you to be in this situation. Why? Because he's shining a light in your life that makes the dark very dark and the light very bright. And he's saying, choose. One person I've heard said that one thing about being knocked flat on your back is the only way you can look is up. And God will let those things into our lives, and you may be going through some of that right now, and the purpose is not that you're being punished for being a bad person. The purpose is that God loves you so much, he wants you to get out of the ocean. He wants you to quit being beat up. He wants you to get back into his love and into his life and into his fullness. I'm not saying as soon as you make that decision, he's going to suddenly wash you ashore, but recognize God's plan for you is to take the scars that you have and turn them into beauty. It won't make them go away. May not even make them hurt that much less, but he'll turn them into beauty. And some of you here, you're in a not a really bad spot in your life now, but man, do you have the scars. You've got the scars you tell people about. You got the scars you don't tell very many people about. You've got the scars you don't tell anybody about. And you're carrying around those scars, and they're beating you down. And every time you look at those scars, you say, God must not love me because he let me have this event in my life. God must not love me because he's let me go through this pain. God could never do anything with me because look at all the stuff in my past. And I would point out to you what a scar is. You know what a scar is? A scar is a mark of a hurt that is healing. And God is polishing you up. Matter of fact, if you're looking at the scars from your past and you're being weighed down by those, I would ask you to look closer and spot the places where God has already taken some of those scars and turned them into beauty. where God has already taken some of the pain that you felt in your past, and he's already made something rather glorious out of it. Not negating the pain that you had, not minimizing the pain that you had, but somehow in that crap field, he grew a beautiful flower out of some of it. And he wants to continue the process. Now, for some of us, some of you don't have that relationship with Christ at all. You've never come to accept the fact. You've spent your life, without being mean about it, but you've spent your life choosing darkness. You've rejected God for whatever reasons, and some of them might even be pretty good reasons. Can I tell you, the reasons for accepting him are much better and bigger. And God's calling you to forsake the darkness, to not be like the Pharisees who walked around physically seeing and spiritually blind, to not be like all the people who were the friends and family members who spent all their time running in fear and never found their way to Jesus. God is calling you today to a relationship with him that brings life and fullness. And if you'd like to talk to somebody about having that relationship, all we'd ask you to do at the end of the service is to grab one of these blue bags. We have some on the corner, two on the corner of the platforms, have them back on the bookshelves. And if you grab a blue bag, there's people here that we've trained. And they'll take about 10 minutes. They'll walk you through the contents of the bag. We'll connect you with somebody from that group. And they'll show you how to have that relationship with Christ. If you have that relationship with Christ, we say this all the time, the next step is always obedience, which proves love, which leads to revelation. Somebody else is talking. And if you want to be baptized, let us know. We do that the first Wednesday of every month. There may be something you want to pray about. It could be a scar from your past. It may just be trying to recognize what God's doing in your life. It could be anything you want. We've got a cross over there. It's there for you to pray, place for you to go pray. If you want to pray with somebody, we've got some people aligned around the outside of the auditorium on the walls, and they would just love to talk with you and pray with you if you'd like. We have this concept that life should be fair, that everything good that happens should result in good stuff to us. And when it doesn't happen, we get confused and we get concerned. But recognize that when God comes into your life, step one after God comes into your life is chaos. In the middle of that chaos, what he's trying to do is shine a spotlight on your situation. He's wanting you to see the dark for what it is, and he's wanting you to see the light for what it is. The Bible says at one point, I think it's Joshua says, I have set before you two ways, light and dark, life and death. And I can't make the decision for you, but every day, in every decision, the way to fullness, when you're given the choice between choosing life and choosing death, is to every day, every time, choose life.
Would you stand with us?